The council chamber stretched wider than any stadium on Earth. Representatives from 100 different species filled the curved benches that rose in tiers around the central speaking platform. Ambassador Kevin Walsh stood at that platform, his hands gripping the edges of the podium. He had been speaking for 20 minutes, and he could see that most of the assembled delegates were not listening. "We are not asking for dominance," Kevin said, keeping his voice steady. "We are asking for the right to protect our own people. Our colonies on the frontier are vulnerable. We have families there, children. We need to establish defense stations in the neutral zones to ensure their safety." A rippling sound filled the chamber. It took Kevin a moment to recognize it as laughter. The Kralix delegation, seated in the most prominent position on the upper tier, were making clicking sounds with their mandibles. Their High Chancellor, Drentok, rose from his seat. His forearms spread wide in a gesture that Kevin had learned meant dismissal. "The human speaks of defense," Drentok said. His voice boomed through the chamber without need for amplification. "But what does a species barely 2 decades in space know of galactic security? You stumbled into faster-than-light travel by accident. You built your first colony ship from salvaged parts. And now you demand the right to militarize space that has been peaceful for 10,000 years? More laughter echoed through the chamber. Kevin felt heat rise in his face, but he forced himself to remain calm. Commander Lisa Martinez, standing behind him in her crisp military uniform, touched his shoulder lightly, a reminder to stay focused. "Our methods of reaching space do not change the fact that our people need protection," Kevin said. "The frontier zones have seen increased pirate activity. 3 of our supply ships were attacked last month. We lost 47 crew members. Pirates," Drentok said, waving one hand dismissively. "Every species faces such minor threats. It is the cost of expansion. Perhaps if humanity had developed more slowly, more carefully, you would understand these basic realities." A voice cut through the murmurs that followed. It was old and rough, like stone grinding against stone. "There are realities that Chancellor Drentok has forgotten." The chamber fell silent. Every head turned to look at the speaker. Elder Voskara sat in a section reserved for the oldest members of the council. The Zethian was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species. His skin had faded to pale gray, and his 3 eyes moved slowly as he surveyed the room. "I speak rarely," Voskara continued, "because most matters are temporary concerns that resolve themselves. But I must speak now, because I have heard these arguments before. Not in this chamber, but in the records of the chambers that came before. Chambers that stood when this station did not yet exist." Drentok's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "Elder Voskara, with respect, ancient history is not relevant to current policy." "Ancient history is all that is relevant," Voskara said. "Because the universe repeats itself. I have studied the records. 4 times before, species from harsh worlds reached space, worlds with crushing gravity, violent weather, dangerous predators, death worlds, we called them. And 4 times, the council of that era made the same mistake." Kevin leaned forward slightly. This was unexpected. Voskara had never spoken during his presentations before. "What mistake?" a delegate from the Vreen Collective called out. "The mistake of mockery," Voskara said. "The mistake of dismissing these species as primitive, as weak, as unworthy of respect. The records are clear. Each time, the Deathworld species asked only for basic rights. The right to defend themselves, the right to be heard. And each time, the established powers laughed. They imposed restrictions. They occupied colonies. They believed their advanced technology and ancient civilizations made them superior." The old Zethian's middle eye focused on Drentok. "And each time, the Deathworlders reminded the galaxy of a simple truth. Advancement and age do not equal strength. Survival does. And species that evolved fighting their own world every day understand survival in ways that we, from gentle planets, cannot imagine." "Fairy tales," Drentok said. "You speak of legends and myths. I deal in facts. The fact is that humanity has 12 colony worlds and a defense fleet of perhaps 200 ships. The Kralix Empire alone maintains fleets in 40 sectors, with vessels numbering in the thousands. We have held galactic peace for 6 centuries. We do not need Death World primitives building military installations on our borders. Your borders, Kevin said quietly. The neutral zones are neutral. They do not belong to the Kralix Empire. They belong to civilization, Drentok shot back. Which humanity is barely part of. You have contributed nothing to galactic culture. Your technology is borrowed or stolen. Your science is derivative. You are children playing with tools you do not understand. Lisa stepped forward, and Kevin held up a hand to stop her. He knew what she wanted to say. He wanted to say it too. But losing his temper here would accomplish nothing. We are asking for a vote, Kevin said. That is all. Let the council decide whether humanity deserves the right to protect its people. Very well, Drentok said. He made a gesture that was close enough to a human shrug. Let us vote. Let the council show this young species how democracy works. The voting was done through the chamber's ancient systems. Each delegate entered their choice into terminals at their seats. Kevin watched as the numbers appeared on the central display. His stomach sank with each passing second. 47 in favor of humanity's request. 412 against. The motion fails, the council speaker announced. Her voice was neutral, neither sympathetic nor harsh. Furthermore, the council agrees with Chancellor Drentok's proposal that frontier security is best maintained by established forces. The Kralix Empire is hereby authorized to provide protective oversight for all colonies in the disputed sectors, human settlements included. Kevin felt Lisa's hand tighten on his shoulder. He knew what this meant. The Kralix would send their ships to human colonies. They would claim to be protecting them. In reality, it would be occupation. This is a mistake, Kevin said. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. Our people will not accept foreign military forces on their worlds. Then your people will learn to accept reality, Drentok said. Just as you must learn to accept your place in the galactic order. You are the newest species at this table. The least experienced. The least advanced. It is time you understood that being part of galactic civilization means accepting the judgment of those who came before you. Kevin gathered his documents and turned to leave. Lisa walked beside him, her jaw tight with anger. As they reached the exit, that grinding voice called out once more. Ambassador Walsh. Kevin turned to see Elder Voskara standing at the rail of his section, looking down at them. I am sorry, the old Zethian said. I tried to warn them. But some lessons can only be learned through pain. The universe always repeats its mistakes, Kevin nodded slowly. He wanted to ask what Voskara meant. What those old records really said about Death World species. But the elder had already turned away. Moving slowly back to his seat, outside the chamber, Lisa finally spoke. We need to contact Earth immediately. The frontier colonies have to be warned. They already know, Kevin said. I sent word before the vote. They will not surrender. They cannot. They left Earth to build new lives, not to live under occupation. Then there will be blood, Lisa said quietly. Kevin looked out through the massive windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of the council's authority, human families were going about their lives, working their farms, raising their children, building something new. And soon, Kralix warships would arrive to take that away from them. Yes, Kevin said. There will be blood. I only hope the council realizes what they have started before it is too late. But even as he said it, he suspected it was already too late. The vote had been cast. The decision made. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the future was already rushing toward them, carrying consequences that no one in that chamber could yet imagine. The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony like it had for the past 8 years since the settlement was founded. Daniel Cooper stood on the porch of his small office, coffee in hand, watching the farmers begin their daily work in the fields below. The settlement spread across a valley between 2 mountain ranges, about 3,000 people who had come to Kepler 442 looking for a fresh start. Daniel had been one of the first to arrive. Former Earth Marine, now serving as the colony's sheriff. The job was usually boring. Settling disputes between neighbors, finding lost children, occasionally dealing with someone who had too much homemade alcohol and decided to start a fight. Nicole Harper walked up beside him. She ran the colonial administration from an office even smaller than his. They had been together for 3 years now, and Daniel still felt grateful every morning that she had chosen to stay on this frontier world instead of returning to Earth. "Ships on the horizon," Nicole said. Her voice was tight. Daniel looked up. 3 dark shapes were descending through the atmosphere, growing larger by the second. They were not human ships. The design was wrong. Too angular. Too aggressive. "Kralix," Daniel said. He set down his coffee cup carefully. "The Council's decision must have gone through. I was hoping Earth would find a way to stop it," Nicole said. "Earth tried. Ambassador Walsh sent word 3 days ago. The vote was not even close. The ships landed in the open field north of the settlement. They were warships," Daniel saw immediately. Not transports. Not diplomatic vessels. Ships designed to intimidate and control. Landing ramps extended, and Kralix soldiers marched out in formation. Daniel counted at least 200 of them. A crowd was gathering. Colonists leaving their homes and fields to see what was happening. Daniel saw worry on their faces. These people had left Earth to escape exactly this kind of authority. They had chosen the frontier specifically because it meant freedom. A Kralix officer approached the settlement. His armor was decorated with marks that Daniel recognized as signs of rank. 2 soldiers flanked him. Weapons held ready. "I am Warlord Kreshnal," the Kralix announced. His voice came from a translation device on his chest. "By order of the Galactic Council, this colony is now under Kralix protection. All residents will comply with our security protocols. Resistance will be met with appropriate force." Daniel stepped forward. He kept his hands visible and empty. Years of military training had taught him when to fight and when to talk. "I am Sheriff Daniel Cooper. This is Colonial Administrator Nicole Harper. We were not informed of your arrival. What exactly do these security protocols involve?" Kreshnal's mandibles clicked. "All weapons will be surrendered immediately. All supplies will be registered and distributed according to our oversight. All communications off-world will be monitored. All gatherings of more than 10 individuals require our approval." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Someone shouted an obscenity. Daniel raised his hand for calm. "With respect, Warlord, we are a farming community. We need weapons to protect our livestock from predators. We need to communicate with supply ships. We need to gather for community decisions. Then you will learn to do without," Kreshnal said. "You are primitives who do not understand the requirements of civilized society. We will teach you. Beginning now. All weapons to be collected within the hour. Anyone found with a weapon after that time will be imprisoned." Nicole stepped forward. "We will need to contact the Galactic Council. File a formal complaint. You may file whatever you wish," Kreshnal said. "It will change nothing. We have our orders." The Kralix soldiers began moving through the settlement. They went house to house, demanding weapons. Most colonists had hunting rifles or simple handguns. They surrendered them with visible anger. But they surrendered. Daniel watched and said nothing, but his mind was already working. Over the next week, it became clear that weapons were only the beginning. Kreshnal imposed food rationing. Claiming he needed to ensure proper distribution, he took the best buildings for his soldiers, forcing families to crowd together. He established a curfew. Anyone outside after dark was arrested. The arrests were the worst part. The Kralix built a detention facility from prefabricated materials brought on their ships. They filled it quickly with anyone who questioned their authority. The imprisoned colonists were fed barely enough to survive. They were beaten if they complained. Daniel tried every diplomatic option. He sent messages to Earth, to the Galactic Council, to anyone who might listen. The responses were always the same. The Council had authorized Kralix oversight. Nothing could be done without another vote, and another vote would take months to arrange. Nicole tried to organize peaceful protests. The Kraliks broke them up with violence. She tried to negotiate for better treatment. Kreshnal refused to even meet with her. 2 months after the Kraliks arrived, everything changed. Daniel was walking through the settlement when he heard shouting. He ran toward the sound and found a crowd gathered in front of the general store. A Kralik soldier stood over an old farmer named Paul Henderson, beating him with the butt of his weapon. "Stop!" Daniel shouted, pushing through the crowd. The Kralik soldier did not stop. He kept hitting Paul, who was trying to protect his head with his arms. Daniel did not think. He grabbed the soldier from behind and pulled him away. The Kralik spun and swung his weapon at Daniel's head. Daniel ducked, let his training take over, and put the soldier on the ground with 3 quick movements. The other soldiers nearby raised their weapons. Daniel raised his hands. "He was going to kill that man," Daniel said. "I just stopped him." "You assaulted Kralik's security forces," another soldier said. "You will be imprisoned." They took Daniel to the detention facility. They put him in a cell with 15 other colonists. Nicole came to the fence that evening, her eyes red from crying. "I will get you out," she said. "I will find a way." "Do not do anything stupid," Daniel said. "Keep everyone calm. Keep trying the diplomatic channels." But he knew it was pointless. There were no diplomatic channels anymore. There was only occupation. 3 days later, the situation exploded. A teenage boy named Chris Patterson was caught taking food from the Kralik supply depot. He was trying to feed his younger siblings because the rationing left them hungry every night. The Kraliks caught him and made an example. They brought him to the center of the settlement and executed him in front of everyone. The boy was 16 years old. That night, the freighter Wanderer landed at the colony's small spaceport. Captain Greg Thorne had been making supply runs to New Haven for years. He brought more than supplies this time. Daniel was released from detention 2 hours later. The Kralik simply opened the cells and told everyone to leave. He found Nicole waiting outside with Greg. "What happened?" Daniel asked. "Change of plans," Greg said. He looked grim. "I brought weapons. Real ones. And word from Earth. If you want to fight, you are not alone." They gathered in secret that night. 200 colonists in the old storage barn at the edge of the settlement. Greg opened crates that were supposed to contain farming equipment. Inside were military-grade rifles, body armor, communications gear. "Earth cannot officially support a rebellion," Greg said. "But unofficially, you have everything you need. The choice is yours." Daniel looked at the faces around him. Farmers, teachers, engineers, people who had come to the frontier to build, not to fight. But he also saw anger, determination, and grief for a 16-year-old boy who would never grow up. "They killed a child," someone said. "They beat us. They starve us. They treat us like animals. If we fight, more will die," Nicole said quietly. "We need to understand that. If we do not fight, we die slowly," another voice called out. "At least this way, we die on our feet." Daniel thought about Paul Henderson, beaten for refusing to surrender his family's food stores. He thought about Chris Patterson, executed for trying to feed his siblings. He thought about all the messages to Earth and the council that had accomplished nothing. "We vote," Daniel said. "Everyone here gets a choice. Those who want to fight, stay. Those who want to try other options, leave now. No judgment either way." Nobody left. They planned through the night. The attack would come in 3 waves. First, disable the Kralik's communications. Second, hit the detention facility and free the prisoners. Third, assault the garrison while they were confused and unorganized. It was not a complicated plan. It did not need to be. The Kraliks had been on New Haven for months. They had grown comfortable, lazy. They believed the humans were broken. That was their mistake. The attack began at midnight. Daniel led a team to the communications array, while others cut the power to the garrison. The Kralik's guards were dead before they could sound an alarm. Not executed, not murdered, but put down with the cold efficiency of people who had made a hard choice and would not hesitate. The detention facility fell next. The prisoners were weak from poor treatment but angry enough to fight. They armed themselves with weapons taken from the guards and joined the assault. The garrison was chaos. Krallick's soldiers rushing from their quarters, trying to organize a defense, falling to coordinated fire from colonists who knew every street and building. Warlord Kreshnal tried to rally his forces, but he was isolated and surrounded. Daniel found him in the command building. The warlord's armor was damaged, one of his arms hanging limp. "You are making a terrible mistake," Kreshnal said. "The Empire will send a fleet. They will destroy this entire world." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But you will not see it." The last Krallick soldier fell at dawn. The colonists gathered the bodies and the weapons. They sent a message to every human colony in the frontier. A simple broadcast that said the occupation of New Haven had ended. Daniel stood with Nicole in the center of the settlement as the sun rose. Around them, colonists tended to the wounded and mourned their dead. 12 had been killed in the fighting. A small price compared to what the Krallicks had taken from them, but still too high. "What now?" Nicole asked. Daniel looked at the Krallick ships, dormant now that no one alive could pilot them. He looked at his people, tired and bloodied but free. "Now we prepare," he said. Because Kreshnal was right. The Empire will send more ships. And when they come, we need to be ready to send them home the same way. Greg walked up beside them. "I am heading to the other colonies, spreading the word. If New Haven can do this, so can they." "It will mean war," Nicole said. "War is already here," Greg said. "The Krallicks started it when they occupied our homes. We are just finishing it." He left that morning. His broadcast would reach 17 other human colonies by the end of the week. And in every settlement, the story would be the same. Occupation, resistance, victory. The galaxy had pushed humanity too far. Now it would learn what that meant. Admiral Eric Stone stood in the command center buried 300 meters beneath the surface of Mars. The room was filled with displays showing ship positions, supply lines, intelligence reports. Every screen told the same story. War was coming. And it would arrive faster than anyone had hoped. 18 colonies have declared independence from Krallick's oversight, his intelligence officer reported. 15 more are in active resistance. Total Krallick's casualties, estimated at 4,000 soldiers. Eric studied the tactical map. The frontier was burning. Every human settlement that had been occupied was now free. And the Krallicks were scrambling to understand what had happened. 4,000 soldiers dead in less than 2 weeks. It was a massacre. "What is the Krallick's response?" Eric asked. "They are assembling a fleet at Rally Point Epsilon. Current count is 270 warships. More arriving every day. Intelligence suggests they intend to make an example of human space." President Ashley Morrison entered the command center. She looked tired. She had been in constant meetings with Earth's government, trying to find a peaceful solution. Eric knew from her expression that she had failed. "The Galactic Council refuses to intervene," Ashley said. "High Chancellor Drentok has convinced them this is an internal security matter. The Krallicks have full authorization to restore order by any means necessary." "Order," Eric said bitterly. "They mean submission. They mean extinction," Ashley said. She pulled up a message on her tablet and showed it to him. "This was sent to every human colony this morning. Unconditional surrender within 72 hours. Or the Krallick's fleet will reduce every settlement to ash. No negotiations. No exceptions." Eric read the message twice. The language was clear and brutal. The Krallicks were not interested in re-establishing their occupation. They wanted revenge. "We cannot let them slaughter our people," Eric said. "We cannot stop them in open battle," Ashley replied. "Our fleet is a fifth the size of theirs. Our ships are newer, but we have no combat experience against an organized military power. If we meet them head-on, we will lose. Then we do not meet them head-on." Eric pulled up the fleet deployment data. Earth had 212 warships. Most of them patrol, craft, and light cruisers. The Krallicks had centuries of military tradition and thousands of battle-tested vessels. But numbers were not everything. Earth had advantages the Kralliks did not expect. "We pull every ship back to defensive positions around our core systems," Eric said. "We evacuate non-essential personnel from the frontier colonies. Then we make the Kralliks come to us on ground we choose. If we speed, they will see it as weakness," Ashley said. "Good. Let them think we are weak. Let them think we are scared. The more confident they are, the bigger the mistakes they will make." Ashley studied him for a long moment. "You have a plan. I have the beginning of one." Across the solar system, Captain Megan Ross received her orders aboard the warship Liberty. Her vessel was one of Earth's newest, built with technology that pushed the boundaries of what humanity understood about physics. Her crew was young and untested, but they were ready. "All ships are pulling back to Earth," her executive officer said. "We are to provide rearguard action and then join the main fleet." Megan looked at the orders on her screen. Between the lines, she could read what Admiral Stone actually wanted. He wanted her to hurt the Kralliks, to make them angry, to draw them forward into a pursuit they could not abandon. "Lieutenant Brandon Kim," Megan said, "plot me a course that takes us through the Kralliks' supply routes. I want to know where they are storing fuel, ammunition, replacement parts." Brandon was her tactical officer. Young, brilliant, and absolutely ruthless when it came to military planning. He smiled as he understood what she was asking. "Hit and run," Brandon said. "Classic guerrilla warfare." "Exactly. The Kralliks expect a defensive fleet waiting for them. Let us give them something different." Meanwhile, in the vast archives beneath Unity Prime Station, Elder Voskara worked in silence. The records he sought were old. Older than the current council. Older than most species membership in galactic civilization. He found the file he was looking for buried under 10,000 years of bureaucratic data. The Last War of the Kalenthi. He opened it and began to read. The Kalenthi had been a death world species. Their planet had crushing gravity and violent tectonic activity. They were physically powerful and naturally aggressive. When they reached space, they asked the Council for simple recognition. They were denied. The established powers mocked them, restricted them, eventually occupied their colonies. The war that followed lasted 3 years. In that time, the Kalenthi killed 17 million soldiers and destroyed 400 worlds. They did not use advanced technology. They used strategy, aggression, and an absolute refusal to surrender. By the time the Council begged for peace, the Kalenthi had shattered 2 empires and left the galaxy in ruins. The parallels to the current situation were impossible to ignore. Voskara closed the file and sat in silence. He had tried to warn them. He had spoken the truth about Death World species. But the Council had not listened. They never did. His communicator chimed. A message from High Chancellor Drentok. The Kralliks were demanding Voskara's presence at an emergency session. When Voskara entered the council chamber, he found it in chaos. Delegates were shouting. Accusations flew back and forth. The Kralliks delegation stood apart, their mandibles clicking in agitation. "Order," the council speaker demanded. "We will have order." The noise gradually subsided. Drentok rose from his seat. His forearms spread in a gesture of outrage. "Humanity has massacred our soldiers," he declared. "They have rejected lawful authority. They have proven themselves unworthy of galactic civilization. The Kralliks Empire requests council authorization for a punitive expedition to restore order and punish this barbaric behavior." "You have already received authorization," a delegate from the Vreen Collective pointed out. "What more do you need?" "I want the Council's explicit support for complete suppression," Drentok said. "These humans must learn their place. If that requires destroying a few of their worlds as examples, so be it." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some delegates nodded agreement. Others looked uncomfortable. Voskara rose slowly from his seat. "I must speak." The chamber fell silent. Voskara's voice, when it came, was stronger than it had been in years. "I have studied the archives. I have read the records of every Death World species that joined our civilization. And I have found a pattern. 4 times before, we made the same mistakes we are making now. 4 times, we mocked them, restricted them, occupied them, and 4 times, we paid a terrible price. Ancient history, Drentok said dismissively. Recent future, Voskara replied. The Kalenthi War ended 10,000 years ago. Before that, the Brenthak conflict. Before that, the siege of Thandros. Each time, a species from a harsh world reached space and asked only for respect. Each time, we gave them contempt. Each time, they reminded us that survival breeds strength in ways our comfortable civilizations cannot match. Are you suggesting we should fear these primitives? Drentok demanded. I am suggesting we should learn from history, Voskara said. The Kalenthi started their war with a smaller fleet than humanity has now. They ended it having burned a quarter of known space. The Brenthak had no military tradition. They still destroyed 3 empires. The pattern is clear. Death World species, when pushed to violence, do not fight like us. They fight to win, no matter the cost. Then we will teach them that victory is impossible, Drentok said. Our fleet numbers 300 vessels and growing. We have the finest military in the galaxy. We have centuries of experience. What do the humans have? A handful of new ships and desperate colonists? They have what every Death World species has, Voskara said quietly. They have nothing left to lose. And that makes them the most dangerous enemy you will ever face. The vote was called. The council approved the Kralek's punitive expedition by a wide margin. Only the oldest delegates, those who remembered or had studied the ancient wars, voted against it. Voskara returned to his quarters and sent a coded message to Ambassador Kevin Walsh. He knew it would not stop the war. Nothing could stop it now, but perhaps it would help the humans understand what they faced and what they needed to do to survive. The message was simple. Study the Kalenthi War. Fight like they did. Show no mercy to those who showed you none. And when the council begs you to stop, make them pay for peace. On Mars, Admiral Eric Stone received reports that the Kralek's fleet had begun moving. 300 warships, organized into battle groups, advancing toward human space. Their course was direct. Their intent was clear. They planned to smash through Earth's defenses and make examples of the core worlds. Captain Megan Ross and the Liberty reached the first Kralek supply depot 2 days ahead of the main fleet. It was a massive facility, storing enough fuel and munitions to supply the entire invasion force. It was also poorly defended. The Kraleks had not expected any resistance this far from human space. The Liberty's attack lasted 12 minutes. Precision strikes destroyed storage tanks, detonated ammunition reserves, and crippled the facility's defenses. By the time Kralek's reinforcements arrived, the Liberty was already jumping to its next target. Brandon plotted their course with cold efficiency. 3 more supply depots, 2 repair stations, a command and control relay. Each strike was quick, brutal, and perfectly executed. Word spread through the Kralek's fleet. A human warship was operating in their rear areas. Supplies were being destroyed. Communication lines were being cut. And no matter how many ships they sent to hunt it, the Liberty always stayed 1 step ahead. High Chancellor Drentok ordered 50 vessels detached from the main fleet to hunt down and destroy the human raider. It was exactly what Admiral Stone had wanted. As the Kralek's fleet approached human space, they found themselves fighting on 2 fronts. Ahead, Earth's defensive fleet waited in carefully prepared positions. Behind, the Liberty and a growing number of other human raiders turned their supply lines into a shooting gallery. In the command center on Mars, Eric watched the tactical displays update in real time. The Kraleks were powerful, experienced, well-equipped. But they were fighting the kind of war they knew. Formal fleet engagements, set-piece battles, military doctrine refined over centuries. Earth was fighting a different war. The kind of war you fought when you were smaller, weaker, desperate. The kind of war where survival mattered more than glory. They are walking into a trap, Ashley said, standing beside Eric, and they do not even know it. They will learn, Eric said. The question is whether they will learn before we run out of ships and people. The Kralix fleet crossed into human space at full strength, confident in their superiority. They expected fear, surrender, desperate pleas for mercy. What they found instead was silence. Every human ship had vanished. Every defensive position was empty. The core worlds were fortified, but undefended. And in that silence, somewhere in the dark between the stars, humanity sharpened its knives and prepared to teach the galaxy what a Death World species could do when survival was the only option left. The Kralix fleet moved through human space like a storm, 300 warships in perfect formation, weapons ready, shields at maximum. High Chancellor Drentok commanded from his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the tactical displays with growing satisfaction. The humans were running. Every system the fleet entered was empty. Colonies evacuated. Defense platforms abandoned. It was exactly as he had predicted. Faced with overwhelming force, the primitives had lost their nerve. How long until we reach Earth? Drentok asked. 18 hours at current speed, his tactical officer replied. The direct route is clear. No resistance encountered. Maintain formation. When we arrive, I want every orbital platform destroyed, every military installation reduced to rubble. Then we will discuss terms of surrender. But in the darkness behind the Kralix fleet, Captain Megan Ross watched through the Liberty's sensors and smiled. They took the bait, she said. All 300 ships committed to the direct route. Brandon Kim worked at his tactical station, marking targets on the display. The Kralix supply line stretched back through 4 systems now. Fuel tankers, ammunition haulers, repair ships, everything the fleet needed to maintain their advance. We have 17 human ships in position, Brandon said. Coordinated strikes can hit every major supply point simultaneously. Then let us remind them why long supply lines are dangerous. The Liberty and its sister ships struck at the same moment across 4 different systems. Supply depots exploded. Fuel tankers vented their contents into space. Repair facilities went dark as power systems were destroyed. In 30 minutes of coordinated chaos, the Kralix fleet lost 70% of its logistical support. Drentok received the reports with disbelief. How? How are they attacking so far behind our lines? The human ships are faster than anticipated, his tactical officer said. They are using hit-and-run tactics, striking and jumping away before our forces can respond. Send more ships to protect the supply lines. We have already detached 80 vessels for rearguard duty. Detaching more will weaken the main fleet. Drentok's mandibles clicked in anger. These are primitives playing games. The supply losses are inconvenient, nothing more. We have enough fuel and ammunition to reach Earth and conduct our bombardment. That is all that matters. But the supply attacks were only the beginning. Colonel Scott Henderson crouched in the darkness of a Kralix military installation on the planet Zenthar 4. His special forces team had infiltrated 3 days ago, hidden among civilian supply shipments. Now they moved through the base like ghosts, placing charges on critical systems. Scott had been with Earth's Special Operations community for 15 years. He had trained for every kind of warfare. But this was different. This was not about winning territory or capturing objectives. This was about making the enemy bleed for every meter they advanced. Charges set on the power core, his demolitions expert whispered over the comm. We have 15 minutes. Copy that. All teams, fall back to extraction point. They moved through the base using stolen access codes and carefully mapped patrol routes. By the time the first explosion ripped through the power core, Scott and his team were already aboard their stealth shuttle, jumping to the next target. The Kralix installation went dark. 3,000 soldiers found themselves trapped without power, without communications, without support. It would take weeks to repair the damage, and Scott's team was one of 30 operating throughout Kralix space. Admiral Eric Stone watched the reports come in from his command center on Mars. The Kralix fleet had slowed. Not much, but enough to notice. They were diverting resources to protect their supply lines, sending ships to hunt for human raiders, struggling to maintain their advance while fighting in their own rear areas. "They are learning," Eric said, "but slowly. The main fleet will reach Earth in 12 hours, his tactical officer warned. "Even damaged and undersupplied, they still outnumber us 3-1. Then we make sure they are too exhausted to fight when they arrive." The next phase began 6 hours before the Krolix fleet reached Earth. Small human task forces appeared at the edge of the Krolix formation. They fired long-range missiles and then jumped away before the Krolix could respond. Then they appeared somewhere else and did it again. The attacks did minimal damage. A few shields weakened. A few weapon systems damaged. But they forced the Krolix fleet to maintain battle readiness. Crews that should have been sleeping stayed at their stations. Officers who should have been planning the attack on Earth were instead chasing ghosts. Drentok refused to slow down. "These pinprick attacks are meaningless. All ships maintain course. We will reach Earth on schedule." Lieutenant Brandon Kim studied the Krolix fleet's formation from the Liberty's tactical station. The enemy had tightened up, ships moving closer together for mutual protection. It was textbook defensive doctrine. It was also exactly what Earth's planners had hoped for. "They are clustering," Brandon reported. "Maximum defensive posture. They have sacrificed maneuverability for protection." Good," Megan said. "Tight formations are vulnerable to certain kinds of weapons. Relay that data to Admiral Stone." The Krolix fleet entered Earth's solar system to find it heavily defended. Orbital platforms surrounded every major planet. The moon bristled with missile batteries. Earth itself was protected by 3 rings of defensive satellites, but the human fleet was nowhere to be seen. "Where are their ships?" Drentok demanded. "Scanning," his sensor officer replied. "No major concentrations detected." "Wait. Contact." Multiple contacts emerging from behind Jupiter. Earth's fleet appeared in organized groups, accelerating toward the Krolix formation. But they were not attacking. They were positioning themselves at specific points around the enemy fleet. "They are trying to surround us," the Krolix tactical officer said. "Foolish. Their numbers are too small." Drentok studied the tactical display. The human ships were spreading out, creating a loose sphere around his fleet. It made no tactical sense. In open battle, his concentrated firepower would crush them. "All ships, open fire. Destroy the nearest human vessels." The Krolix fleet opened up with devastating volleys. Missiles and energy weapons filled the space between the fleets. The first human ships died in seconds, their shields overwhelmed by the concentrated fire. But those ships had accomplished their mission. They had held their positions just long enough. "Fire," Admiral Eric Stone ordered. From positions throughout the solar system, Earth unleashed weapons the Krolix had never seen before. Kinetic missiles that did not explode on impact but instead punched through shields and hulls with pure mass. Energy weapons that synchronized their fire to create cascading shield failures. And most devastating of all, proximity mines that human ships had been seeding throughout the battle space for the past hour. The Krolix fleet, clustered in defensive formation, suddenly found itself in a killing box. Every direction they turned, weapons tore into their ships. The tight formation that was supposed to protect them instead ensured that weapons meant for one ship damaged 3 or 4 others nearby. "Scatter," Drentok ordered. "Break formation." But it was too late. The human fleet moved with precision, cutting off escape routes, forcing the Krolix ships into even tighter clusters. And all the while, those terrible kinetic weapons kept hammering into them, each impact sending shockwaves through multiple vessels. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Krolix fleet had been reduced to half its original strength. 80 ships destroyed outright. 70 more too damaged to continue fighting. The survivors limped away from Earth. Their formation shattered. Their confidence broken. Drentok stared at his tactical display in disbelief. He had brought the finest fleet in the galaxy. He had centuries of military tradition, advanced weapons, battle-tested crews, and a species barely 2 decades in space had torn him apart. "How?" he whispered. "How did they know?" His tactical officer had no answer. But on Earth, Admiral Eric Stone knew exactly how. It was simple mathematics. The Kralliks fought like professionals, following doctrine, using proven tactics, relying on their experience and superiority. Humans fought like survivors. They studied their enemy, found weaknesses, exploited them without hesitation or honor. They did not care about fair fights or glorious victory. They cared about winning, and they were willing to do whatever it took. Damage report, Eric ordered. 47 ships lost, 63 damaged, but the fleet is still operational. Eric studied the tactical map. The Kralliks were retreating toward their home territory. They would regroup, rebuild, and they would be back, angry and determined to restore their honor. "We bloodied them," Ashley Morrison said, joining Eric in the command center. "But this is not over." "No," Eric agreed. "This is just the beginning." They thought they could occupy our worlds, and we would accept it. They thought they could threaten our people, and we would surrender. They were wrong. He pulled up a new tactical plot. Not defensive positions around Earth, but attack vectors leading deep into Krallik space. "We have shown them we can defend ourselves," Eric said. "Now we show them what happens when you push a Death World species too far. We take the fight to them. We hit their worlds, their installations, their supply lines. We make them understand that threatening humanity has consequences." "The Council will call it aggression," Ashley said. "The Council can say whatever they want. They had their chance to stop this peacefully. They chose to authorize Krallik's occupation of our colonies. They chose to allow threats of extermination. They chose to ignore every diplomatic option we offered." Eric turned to his command staff. "Send orders to all fleet elements. We are going on the offensive. Captain Ross and her raiders will continue their operations, but now they will have company. I want strike forces hitting Krallik's military targets throughout their territory. No colonies, no civilian populations. But every military installation, every supply depot, every fleet base, is a valid target." The orders went out within the hour. Earth's fleet, bloodied but victorious, reorganized for offensive operations. The Kralliks had come to human space expecting to teach a lesson. Instead, they had learned one. Captain Megan Ross received her new orders aboard the Liberty. She read them twice, then smiled. "Plot a course for Krallik's Prime," she told Brandon. "Deep penetration. We are going to send a message that the High Chancellor cannot ignore." "What kind of message?" Brandon asked. Megan looked at the tactical plot showing the Kralliks' homeworld. Heavily defended. Considered impregnable. The heart of their empire, and their pride. "The kind of message," she said, "that says, humanity is done asking for permission to exist. We are taking what is ours. And if the Kralliks want to stop us, they better bring more than 300 ships next time." The Liberty jumped to faster than light speed, carrying Earth's fury toward the heart of an empire that had forgotten the most important rule of galactic civilization: never back a survivor into a corner. Because survivors do not fight to win. They fight to make sure the other side regrets starting the fight in the first place. And humanity, children of Earth, were the greatest survivors the galaxy had ever seen. The Liberty emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kralliks' home system. Captain Megan Ross stood on the bridge, studying the tactical displays with cold focus. Ahead lay Krallik's Prime, the heart of an empire that had ruled this sector for 600 years. 64 defense platforms, Brandon Kim reported. 3 orbital fortresses, and a fleet of at least 140 warships on patrol. This is the most heavily defended system in their territory. "Good," Megan said. "That means they will remember what happens here." Behind the Liberty, another 23 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was not the full Earth fleet. Admiral Stone had kept most of their forces in defensive positions around human space. But 24 ships were enough for what they needed to do. "All ships, spread out," Megan ordered. "Attack pattern Delta 7. We are not here to conquer. We are here to send a message." The human ships split into small groups and accelerated toward different points around Krallik's Prime. The defenders reacted immediately. launching fighters and repositioning warships to intercept, but the humans did not approach the planet. They targeted the orbital infrastructure instead. Defense platforms exploded under coordinated missile strikes. Orbital fortresses found their shields overwhelmed by synchronized energy weapons. The Kralix fleet moved to engage, but the human ships were faster, more maneuverable. They struck and vanished, reappearing somewhere else to strike again. High Chancellor Drentok watched from the surface command center as his world's defenses burned in space above. He had returned to Kralix Prime in disgrace after the defeat at Earth. He had been preparing for another assault, gathering forces for revenge. Now the humans had brought the war to him. "They are not trying to land," his military advisor said. "They are destroying our orbital capabilities and then withdrawing." "Why?" Drentok demanded. "What is the point of this attack?" "A demonstration," the advisor replied quietly. "They are showing us they can reach our homeworld whenever they choose." The realization hit Drentok like a physical blow. The humans were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting to prove a point. To show that Kralix superiority was a lie. To demonstrate that Earth could strike anywhere, anytime. And there was nothing the Empire could do to stop them. "Recall all ships to defensive positions," Drentok ordered. "Protect the planet at all costs." But by the time the Kralix fleet reorganized, the human ships were already jumping away. They left behind burning wreckage and a message broadcast on every frequency. The message was simple. It was delivered by Admiral Eric Stone himself, standing in his command center on Mars. "People of the Kralix Empire. Your leaders occupied our colonies. They imprisoned our people. They killed our children. When we defended ourselves, they brought a fleet to exterminate us. We defeated that fleet at Earth. Now we have struck at your homeworld. Not to conquer, not to slaughter innocents, but to show you that we can. This war can end today. Withdraw from all human space. Pay reparations for the lives you took. Accept our sovereignty. Do this, and we will return to peace. Refuse, and we will burn every military installation you have until you have no choice but to accept." The message ended with footage from the battle above Kralix Prime. Their mighty defenses reduced to debris, their proud fleets scattered and broken, and through it all, those terrible human ships moving like predators, untouchable and unstoppable. On Unity Prime Station, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives. The news from Kralix Prime had spread like wildfire through galactic civilization. Elder Voskara sat in his customary place, watching the chaos unfold. He had seen this coming. He had warned them, but they had not listened. And now they were reaping the consequences. Ambassador Kevin Walsh stood at the central podium. He looked different than he had 6 months ago. Harder, colder. The mockery he had endured then had forged him into something new. "The Kralix Empire demanded this council authorize their occupation of human colonies," Kevin said. His voice carried through the silent chamber. "You agreed. They demanded authorization to exterminate our species. You agreed. They brought 300 warships to our homeworld. And we destroyed half of them. Now we have demonstrated that we can strike at the heart of their empire. And still, we offer peace. You attack a council-sanctioned operation," a delegate shouted. "This is rebellion. This is survival." Kevin replied, "You gave the Kralix permission to kill us. We chose not to die. If that is rebellion, then we will rebel." High Chancellor Drentok stood, his forearms trembling with rage. "You are primitives. Barbarians. You have no right to wage war against civilized species." "We have every right to defend ourselves," Kevin said. "And we have proven we can do it. The question is not whether humanity has the right to exist. The question is whether you will accept that we exist, or whether you will force us to keep proving it until your empire is ashes." The chamber erupted, delegates shouting, accusations flying. The council speaker called for order, but was ignored. Finally, Elder Voskara rose from his seat. His voice, though not loud, somehow cut through the noise. "Enough." The chamber fell silent. I told you this would happen, Voskara said. I showed you the records. The Kalenthi. The Brenthak. The Siege of Thandros. Every time, we made the same mistakes. Every time, we paid in blood and fire. And every time, we learned nothing. He turned his 3 eyes on Drentok. You brought this war, Chancellor. You occupied their worlds. You killed their children. You threatened extermination. And now you are shocked that they fight back? You are shocked that a species from a death world, a species that evolved fighting for survival every day, knows how to wage war better than your ceremonial military? And we have honor, Drentok said. We have tradition, and they have necessity, Voskara replied. Which is more powerful, Chancellor, your 6 centuries of tradition, or their 4 billion years of evolution on a world that kills everything weak? You thought your technology and experience made you superior. They proved you wrong. Accept it. End this war, or they will end your empire. The vote was called. Authorization for the Kraliks to continue military operations against humanity. The result was not even close. Only the Kraliks delegation voted in favor. Every other species, even those who had mocked humanity 6 months ago, voted to withdraw council support. Drentok stood alone, his defeat absolute. The council will not support further aggression, the speaker announced. Both parties are ordered to cease hostilities and enter negotiations. Kevin walked out of the chamber to find Lieutenant Jake Morrison waiting for him. The young officer had been serving with Earth's fleet throughout the war. He had seen things that changed him, made him understand what humanity was capable of when survival was at stake. Admiral Stone wants you to return to Earth, Jake said. He says the real negotiations need to happen there. Not in this council. Agreed, Kevin said. The council had its chance. They chose to enable our enemies. Now they can watch while we dictate terms. 3 weeks later, High Chancellor Drentok arrived on Mars. He came not with a fleet, but with a single diplomatic ship. He came in defeat, seeking terms that would allow his empire to survive. Admiral Eric Stone met him in the command center. No ceremony, no formal protocols. Just 2 military leaders facing each other across a table. You have won, Drentok said. The words seemed to physically pain him. What are your demands? Eric placed a document on the table. Complete withdrawal from all human space. Formal recognition of human sovereignty. Reparations for damages in the amount of 5 trillion credits. Public apology for war crimes. And a guarantee that no Kraliks military vessel will enter human territory for the next 50 years. Drentok read the terms. They were harsh but not impossible. He had expected worse, had feared demands for Kraliks territory, for occupation, for revenge. You could demand more, Drentok said. You could take our worlds, our resources. You have proven you have the strength. We are not conquerors, Eric said. We never wanted this war. We wanted to be left alone. To build our colonies in peace. To raise our children without fear. You took that from us. Now we are taking it back. Nothing more. Why? Drentok asked. Why not crush us completely? We would, if our positions were reversed. I know, Eric said. That is the difference between us. We fight to survive. You fight to dominate. We win when our people are safe. You only win when everyone else is defeated. That is why we will never be like you. Drentok signed the treaty. His hands shook as he did it, but he signed. The war was over. News of the treaty spread through galactic civilization within hours. Humanity had defeated the Kraliks Empire. Not through conquest or brutality, but through strategic brilliance and sheer determination. The Deathworlders had proven that they belonged in galactic space, and they had done it by making an example of those who thought otherwise. In the council chamber on Unity Prime, Elder Voskara addressed the assembled delegates one final time. You have witnessed history, he said. Not just the defeat of an empire, but the birth of a new age. Humanity has shown us what we had forgotten. That strength is not measured in technology or tradition. It is measured in the will to survive, in the courage to fight when fighting seems impossible, in the wisdom to show mercy when vengeance would be easier. He paused, his three eyes scanning the chamber. The humans asked only to be left alone. We forced them to prove they deserved that right. They proved it. The question now is whether we will learn from this, or whether we will repeat the same mistakes when the next Death World species reaches for the stars. The chamber remained silent. Every delegate understood the message. The galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer a curiosity to be mocked or a primitive species to be controlled. They were a power to be respected, to be feared, to be welcomed as equals, because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. On Earth, President Ashley Morrison addressed her people. We did not choose this war. We did not want it. But when we were forced to fight, we fought with everything we had. We protected our people. We defended our homes. We proved that humanity will never bow to those who threaten our existence. Today, we have peace. Not the peace of surrender, but the peace of victory. And we built it not through conquest, but through strength. Captain Megan Raw stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking out at the stars. Beside her, Lieutenant Brandon Kim reviewed the after-action reports from the campaign. We lost 347 ships, Brandon said. Almost 2,000 crew members killed. Thousands more wounded. I know, Megan said quietly. I remember every name. Was it worth it? Megan thought about the colonies that were now free. The families that could live without fear of occupation. The children who would grow up in a galaxy that respected their right to exist. Yes, she said. It was worth it. We fought so our people would never have to fight this war again. So the next generation could build instead of defend. So humanity could take its place among the stars not as supplicants, but as equals. She turned away from the window. Helm, set a course for Earth. It is time to go home. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. 17. Across the galaxy, species that had watched the war with varying degrees of interest drew their own conclusions. Some, like the Kralliks, learned caution. Others saw opportunity. A few, the wise ones, saw the truth that Elder Voss's Kara had tried to teach. Deathworld species were different. They evolved in crucibles that broke weaker races. They carried within them the hardness of survival, the creativity of desperation, the fury of species that had clawed their way to sentience against impossible odds. And humanity, children of Earth, exemplified everything that made Deathworlders dangerous. They could be peaceful, kind, generous, but push them too far, threaten what they loved, and they would become something else entirely. Something that the comfortable species of the galaxy could barely comprehend. The Kralliks had learned this lesson the hard way. They had mocked humanity, occupied their colonies, threatened extermination, and in return, they had seen their fleet shattered, their homeworld struck, their empire humbled. Other species, watching from the safety of their own territories, made notes, made plans, made very certain they would never give humanity a reason to show them what Earth's fury really meant, because the elders had whispered of that fury for 10,000 years, and those who mocked it found only silence in the end. The silence of broken fleets, the silence of ruined pride, the silence of empires that learned too late that some species are not meant to be conquered. They are meant to be respected, and if respect is not given freely, they will take it by force, and they will make the taking memorable enough that the lesson is never forgotten.